Hey guys, I'm back again with another video, and it might be a bit more of a somber video, as you may have guessed from the title. This video is called How Church Culture Hurt Me, and I just need to get this off, say this right off the bat really quick as a disclaimer. I am very, very thankful for the upbringing that I got, being brought up in the church and having great, wonderful Christian parents that guided me to God, so I'm not complaining about that in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. My intentions for this video is merely to point out an experience that I had that wasn't necessarily the best, in hopes that it may help someone else. So I'm not here to bash anyone who was a part of my life back then, or bash the church, or anyone who thinks differently from me. I'm just trying to express how certain things about church culture made me feel when I was young. So with that being said, let's get right into it. First off, the analytics says only 75% of you guys are not subscribed. The people that come to my video, 75% of you are not subscribed. So do me a favor, click the red button. The red button is always fun, so just click it. Let's get that right out of the way. I would appreciate that very much. So anyways, I grew up in a semi-charismatic Pentecostal church, or at least perhaps they wanted to be charismatic, but they weren't as charismatic as you could be. But anyways, when I went to church, people would raise their hands, as I'm sure you've seen many, many times. And that's a perfectly good thing. That is perfectly fine. I'm not complaining about that whatsoever. If you're the kind of person that feels that it's in your personality to express yourself in an outward way and express your emotions in that way that is visible to others, and you don't mind doing that at all, that's fine, go for it. The problem starts with me is when I was told that I had to do that as a form of worship, and that if I didn't do that, I was made to feel like I was doing something wrong, or I wasn't doing Christianity right. I just want to quickly read Romans 12:1-2. It says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to order your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, good, pleasing, and perfect will." So what struck me about this verse is that worship unto God, that the act that is most pleasing unto God is in a form of worship, is presenting your bodies as a living sacrifice and doing what is holy and pleasing unto the Lord, thereby living every day of your life separated and put aside for God, and serving Him with your life. At least from what I get from that verse, that's what He is most pleased with. And so I was always confused as a young child when people told me that, you know, I had to raise my hands and give an outward expression of emotion during the service in order to please God. And I'm just going to go through really quick why that just didn't work for me. I'm quite introverted, and I was very, very, very shy as a child. I am a very introverted person, and it took me a long time to be able to speak to other people and express myself in a way. Even to this day, as an adult, I do not express my emotions often outright in a group of people. I can be emotional, but usually it's by myself. That's just not my personality. That's just not the way I am made. And so why this really didn't work for me was that I'm just going to describe what it felt like. When I went into church and the music started amping up and everybody started raising their hands and as in a form of worship, again, good on them. That's great for them. There's nothing wrong with that. But then I would feel social pressure. And I had been told by people that if I didn't do that, I was doing something wrong. Like, that's what I was supposed to do. So every time I went into service, especially when I was like 8, 10, 7, and as a young kid, preteen, I felt social pressure, an obligation to behave in a way that was not natural to my personality. And I would be made to feel guilty if I didn't do it. And so I'd be standing there in the service and the music was great. You know, for me, I'm perfectly happy to sing along and think with the music, but I see people raising their hands and you know, I would feel, you know, social pressure to do that. I'd be made to feel guilty if I didn't. So there was a lot of conflict in me during those services, so I never really enjoyed them as much as I could have, because instead of me being there to worship God and just, you know, enjoy the music, sing, express myself in a way in which I was comfortable at the time as a young child, I instead felt a bunch of anxiety about, am I doing this right? Does God accept me if I don't raise my hands? And it kind of just ruined, it tainted the experience for me a bit. And so I remember one time, a couple times, if there was someone who remained nameless, every now and then they'd lock eyes with me during the service or something, and they do this, like they motion to me, it's like, raise your hands, as if like this, as if I'm not sinning or not doing it right if I don't, or I'm not worshiping God if I don't. And of course, that seems to be completely the opposite of what we see in the Bible. And as I began to grow up and learn more and more about the Bible, I realized that worship was something that, you know, I have to do all the time. I gotta give my life to God and go all out and follow His commandments if I love Him, and serve Him in a life of service, and bring out the fruits of the Spirit. And the raising your hands thing in church became less and less important to me, and it was a sort of contention for me when I was growing up. And so when I became mid-teens, I sort of discovered apologetics, and once I realized that there was a logical side to what I believed, I was gone. Like I didn't bother with the emotions anymore, because at that point I basically had become slightly bitter towards that side of things. Whereas, you know, let's just do this really quick. There's L for logic, E for emotions. Now, what would be best is if we had a happy medium, but when I was a kid, there was so much emphasis on the emotions that you would have during the service, the outward expression and the weeping and the raising of hands, that as soon as I discovered apologetics, I went hard to the other side and I never looked back. And so as coming into an adult in my early 20s, I started to realize that I left a lot of good behind in this section, and that it is good to express myself with the Lord in a way that I was meant to. And what that is for me really is I switched churches. As I grew up, I went to a different church, and I finally found a place where I was able to just come and worship God in a way that was genuine for me. And that is, like, for me, I'm a very analytical thinker, so most of the time I'm dwelling on the Bible, I'm thinking through verses and problems and apologetics. And what I like to do is I like to sit and just listen to the music or stand and just let it take my mind places. And even to this day, I still don't express myself, like raise my hands or anything like that, because it's just not me. That's not in my nature. And so I'm just going to check my notes, make sure I have everything. So yeah, so for a long time I didn't even want to go to worship service, because I realized in my early teens that I was so much better at serving God, actually, like doing things. I would always go to help out in the kitchen, always go to help up set up tables, and I was a doer. And it left a bit of a bad taste in my mouth when people always pressured me into trying to express myself to God in a way that I wasn't comfortable with, or a way that didn't come naturally to me. And so I kind of put up a wall to the general worship service for quite a bit of time until I ended up at a different church, and I was able to sort of grow into a community where I was able to, you know, worship God and make a joyful noise unto Him in a way that it was actually genuine for me. I like to play the bass for my church a lot of times, and that is an in the background role. I do not dance, I don't jump, I don't raise my hands, I don't even sing. I just sit in the back and lay down a groove to the drums and try to add something to the worship atmosphere that people are doing. But it's a very subdued and in the background role, which is where I'm comfortable and where I find I serve God best, is just being content with myself, thoughtful, meditative, and not overly expressive. That's just the way I am. And I feel like that's where I serve God best. And so don't want this to be too much longer, so basically, if I had known what I know now, there were times when I was a kid that I did raise my hands and try to do that whole thing, and if I had known what I know now, I never ever ever would have done that, because I would never ever want to worship or express worship to my God in a way that was disingenuous. And you know, and that's what it was when I was a kid. I did it out of pure pressure to raise my hands and express myself in that way. And I know this must seem a bit trivial, and in the long run, yeah, it kind of is, but I feel like this has happened to other people as well. So I wanted to make this video, you know, just to make sure that if there's someone out there who feels this way, it's like, hey, you know, you don't have to worry or feel bad about the fact that you're introverted and that you don't express yourself in an outwardly emotional way, because that's fine. That's okay. There are lots of ways for you to serve God and His kingdom, playing in the background or just being the way you are. You don't have, and when I say being the way you are, I mean your personality, not your sin, your personality. If you're introverted or extroverted, there are so many different roles for you to play, and I just want to encourage you to find that and not to run away from the church service just because you may have had a bad experience one time. And I want to be clear, I didn't have a bad experience. It was, for the most part, good. It was just, there was conflict for me when I was younger, and it didn't feel the greatest at times, because instead of being able to worship God and just take in the music and take in the moment and meditate on Him and try to hear Him, I would always be conflicted and discussing with myself, you know, should I raise my hands, should I not? I don't want to raise my hands. Why do I have to? Why is this form of worship? This is not me. I don't get this. And it just really took away from the moment for me. And so it took me a long time to find a place where I could actually be genuine and partake in a worship service that I feel is actually beneficial for me and others. So if you're in that same position, I just want to encourage you, you know, find a place that, you know, lets you do that, and don't be afraid, and don't let people judge you for silly things like whether or not you raise your hands in church. You know, it's that's not really a big deal at all when it comes to worshiping God. What you should be focusing on is setting your life aside for Jesus and figuring out, you know, how you can serve Him best with the talents and the personality that He has given you. And I think that's it. I think that's good enough. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. We gotta get to 100 subscribers. We gotta get more people in our family. Like my Facebook page, Instagram, and I will see you guys later.